I don't know how long this class is going to go. I put 3:30. It could be well before that. It's just going to depend entirely on how much discussion we have, and I don't want to limit that. I certainly am not up here talking for that length of time. And I will encourage you to participate if you feel to, and also not to feel that you need to, if you'd rather not. Yes.
It's called endlessness.
We're gonna, not today. Not today. And the other thing is, I feel like I should be down there. I'm never quite comfortable being above and talking down, but for the purposes of the recording, I think that's probably just going to work a little better. You're trying to get my attention.
Yeah, could you also say that anytime anyone wants to speak, that they won't get on the recording unless they get the mic from Lorna?
Yeah, Lorna has the mic, and so if you do want to say something, just kind of raise your hand, and she'll come around. And it just part of that not wanting to feel like I'm any different than anybody else here. I'm a student of this as much as you are. I love teaching this because I learn from it something new every time, and it's just a remarkable topic. So why don't we begin with a prayer? Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, dearest friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar, beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, saints of all religions, bless us with understanding of why we die, of where we go, and of what we can do to be at peace and rejoice in the life we have been given and in the one that awaits us when this one ends. Om, peace, amen. It's interesting, we use the word end, and here we are talking about endless. Are we ready for endless? Master said that, the end is endlessness. What does that mean? How is that even possible? That we have no capacity to wrap our minds around whatever that is. The best I can do is I think of it as an unimaginably long train that we're on that we can never get off. All we can do is kind of move from one car forward to the next and to the next, and by the time we get to the front, hopefully, we're not bothered with all this paraphernalia that we're carrying around, and it's something wonderful to be like these five behind me. But we really have no idea of what that means. But what we do know is that it's just an incredibly juicy subject, and also one that is very daunting. To say that it blows the mind, the cliche, is just, it's an understatement. There's nothing that, it's like, can we imagine what it's like, 1 billion galaxies? we can't get past this little planet that we're on, and it's not so little as far as we're concerned. So, I'll ask you, what are you looking for here? It looks to me like what this is all about is we're born, we go through dying, death, there's something else after that, and then we're back again to do it all over. It just goes round and around and around. So everything we know does end. And, comes around again. And, if it hasn't ended yet, it will. Within our frame of reference. I love offering this workshop, but I have to be honest, my mind is blown by the whole thing too. It's so we're on that train, all aboard, and here we go. There's a cartoon that I recently saw that immediately got to the top 10 on my all-time cartoon list. Most of the other 9 are by Gary Larson. But this one shows a man standing in front of a shopping center directory map. And all the shops are laid out. And in the middle, there is an arrow pointing to a location on the map. And you expect it to say, "You are here." But this cartoon, it says, "Why are you here?" And, I love that. It's funny, but it's also very provocative, all at the same time. So don't tell me yet, but I'm going to ask you the same question. And I, invite you to, think about why are you here? What drew you to this workshop that we're doing together? What I'm hoping that you walk away with, myself included, is just a broader perspective of what lies ahead. And what I'd like to do is I want to start at the end and then trace how we get there. And recently, to tell you a story that sort of leads into that, I was in my morning meditation, and I was doing what I frequently do when I'm actually not meditating. I'm, thinking about other things, and what I think about mostly when I'm not meditating and want to be is what's it going to be like to die and not be here anymore? I want to be at peace with that, and I've got uneasiness around that. I don't know if any of you do as well, because I don't know. It is, and as I draw closer to this reality, the subject that comes to mind is what's next. I have, as I think probably all of you do as well, I have in my spiritual tool bag all the teachings and techniques that we've been given to essentially deal with this issue and all others on the spiritual path. But in my tool bag, there is a tool that has always been missing, and that is peace of mind. Peace of mind around this whole idea of death and dying. And, perhaps you know a little bit about that yourselves. And it's uncomfortable. I want to get beyond that. I know we all do. And thanks to these folks, I'm just way ahead of where I used to be. I don't want to say that there's fear that I'm feeling, but it's not comfort. And I want to be really comfortable about what's coming next. And so in that semi-meditation, I suddenly got a message, and it was a very comforting message. Surendra, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Maybe I fall short of what the ideal devotee is. Maybe I've created obstacles that get in the way, habits get in the way of enabling me to have a settlement around this and other issues. Maybe I'm too easily forgetful of God. I know that I am. And I want to have God with me all the time as that comforter. And I forget. And, sometimes I forget for longer times than are good for me, and as a result get into moods and on that up and down seesaw the whole time. But I am moving in the right direction. I can give myself credit for that, and I believe that God is aware of that too. And, so maybe I'm not going to land on as high a plane in the astral world as I would like to, but it's going to be okay. And if nothing else, I hope that you leave here today with that sense too, that, we're God's children, and this isn't a punishment. We're the only ones who punish ourselves. And, it's going to be okay. So, to begin the journey, I'll just ask, and just with a show of hands, and you don't need to give me any details, but has anyone here ever had a near-death experience or an out-of-body experience? Hanuman, yeah, and Julian, Jamin. You guys are probably a little bit ahead of the game because you have some sense of what that's going to be like. Somebody, including me, who doesn't have that memory, that is kind of what is the source, or more of the source of that uneasiness. We don't remember what it's like, and we don't have that feeling, that knowingness. We have to trust in God, trust in Guru. So during these next hours, we'll look deeply at how we can dispel those worries about what Swamiji has called the final exam, that which awaits all of us and awaits our loved ones as well. Hopefully leading to a clear view of how to live fearlessly, joyfully, and fully now and forever. Because forever. There we are. And we'll look at death, from an earthly point of view, but also from how our gurus see it. And we'll discuss how to cope with what is probably most difficult for us, grief. Grief and the loss, the suffering that comes with that. We'll contemplate the nature of these higher dimensions. And finally, as I think I mentioned in an email to those of you who had signed up earlier, we'll do an astral ascension for ourselves. We don't get to attend the one that other people hold for us, so we'll get to attend our own today. And hopefully that will add some comfort as well. In the Bhagavad Gita, on the eve of battle, Arjuna asks Lord Krishna to drive him to the center of the battlefield between the two armies where they're arrayed against each other. And as we know, he looks out, he sees all these familiar faces, these people that he has grown up with, who have been his friends, and even perhaps his enemies, some of them. But he looks out and he says, I can't do this. I can't kill these people who have been such a part of my life. And he lays down his bow and essentially just shrinks in the chariot. And Lord Krishna says to him, Arjuna, you see bodies falling. I see souls rising. Well, that is very encouraging. But we still have to go through the whole ordeal. And there isn't much about that ordeal, that dying, that death that we relish. Like, oh boy, No, it doesn't work that way. So, here are some questions that we can probably answer theoretically, but theory and reality are not necessarily the same. And it's reality, not theory, that keeps us feeling uneasy about everything, particularly about this, anything where there might be confusion or unknowingness around it. So, what is death? Is it a loss of life? Or is it merely passing from one plane of existence to another, as they tell us, some place, somewhere else that perhaps we don't remember? As Swami and Master have both said, that it's like, going through a doorway from one room to another. Well, that would be nice, but that's theoretical. That's not the reality. And what we want to know is, what's in that other room? I want to know what's in that other room. And part of me is going, oh, maybe I don't want to know. But whatever it is, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. What is it that we fear? Do we fear, leaving here alone? Do we fear might be too strong a word, but maybe not, leaving loved ones behind, leaving unfinished business and unfulfilled ambitions? Do we fear that we might be harshly judged? There is, as we hear, a life review, and some of what we have done we're probably not particularly proud of. And does that mean that we're facing something not so pleasant on the other side? Do we view death as a sudden plunge into the vast unknown? Is that what we fear? And thus, how can we come to terms with death that will help us to live more fully and joyfully here? That's what we really want to know. And that's how, in confronting these issues, that we can learn to live more fully every day. Now, obviously, all of you here are ahead of the average person out there when it comes to this subject. You have a much higher awareness of death and its purpose than the average person, because they don't give it a lot of thought. They're, generally trying to keep it away. So much of what that I have to offer is not going to be particularly new to you. I don't think I'm going to say anything you go, oh my God, I didn't know that. But, reminders can be very helpful, especially when they're maybe phrased a little differently than you would phrase them yourself. Death and dying are topics that we encounter every day. And I hope that what we can do here is move beyond the intellectual, because that is going to be the only way that we can get deeper into this and be more at peace and live more fully in the time that we have remaining. We want to be positive and effective. Some of us may be contending with issues that are very difficult to endure. And some of those patterns are counterproductive. We want to move beyond the counterproductivity, because they're just holding us back from where we want to be. So I invite you to be in beginner's mind. As much as you can, let this whole day together be fresh, like you never heard it before. There are very few absolutes in this world. But here's one of us, and for us, it is the big one. We are all going to die. We've known friends and family, many people, I'm sure by now, who are no longer with us. And we have deep feelings about the whole experience of losing loved ones. We have deep feelings about losing ourselves. Maybe there's grief and fear in the midst of all of that as well. We want to talk about that, and I welcome you. I encourage you to share your feelings, if you feel to, as we go through this whole subject. Death draws the curtain on the party of life. It may not be a party much of the time, but it is what is familiar and what we're accustomed to. Thus, it's not surprising that people don't like to think about this. And what we want to do is think about this. Think about it not in any sort of morbid sense, but to invite it into our lives as a guide. From a distance, death seems sort of safely out of sight. Well, for all of us now at our age, it's not so far out of sight anymore. But as long as we're alive, death is what happens only to others. Maybe it intrigues us, but when it gets too close, too personal, most folks, as I said, tend to push it away. So why should we talk about death now when it doesn't seem so imminent? The answer is obvious, quite simply because there's no escape. It's going to happen. Sooner or later, the hourglass is going to run out of sand, and this strange little vehicle that we call a body will no longer be home to the consciousness that it's carrying around. Death, moreover, is going to continue to take others from us, loved ones, friends, and we need to be ready for that too. We'll be talking about how to help others through the process as well. Not to mention that before we ourselves take our leave, we might have to be in a position of making critical decisions about the medical treatment and daily care for others who are dear to us. Maybe you're doing that now. I know that, Lorna, Hanuman, myself to a minor extent, certainly Kathy, who served in hospice. You've dealt with that, and you know the drama and the demands that are around that. It can be like a storm, and the last place you want to be is in the midst of a storm when you're unprepared for it. And so this whole day is really just about preparation. So I'll go back to where we were with that cartoon, and I'll ask you, if you wish to share, why are you here? Anyone? Hanuman. Oh, hang on. Yeah.
Well, before
The mic is. You got the mic on there for him? Okay. Yeah. Now it is.
Okay. Before I answer the questions of why I'm here, what always goes through my mind, especially in this kind of a situation, is who here has a do not resuscitate, so that if you drop dead right here, right now, you go down, I know whether or not I should be doing CPR on you or not. That's a real question for me. I mean, I can remember when I moved to Ananda village, I went up to Peter, and Swamiji was just out there in the garden area, and I asked Peter, what are we supposed to do?
Yeah, hold it a little closer.
What are we supposed to do if Swami goes down and is unresponsive? And he just looked at me and smiled. He didn't actually answer the question.
Yeah.
But it's something that comes to my mind. So even before death, I really want my friends and loved ones to know what I want done
Right.
if I'm dying and am unresponsive. I think it's very important. So why am I here? I'm here as a culmination of everything else I've done up to this point through all my lifetimes. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I'm exactly who I'm supposed to be in this moment in time. And within that, I have to accept that there's good things and also challenging things that this entity is working with in this lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll get to what you were, the issues you were raising. We'll get to, all of that a little bit later too, because of course, as you say, it's very important. Fedor, did you have something you wanted to say?
Oh, no, that I do have the Do Not Resuscitate band.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to make a comment?
Yeah.
Kathy?
Yeah, I'm here. Was that gone?
It is.
To a great extent, because I feel confused about what my thoughts are about dying. Sometimes I just think, oh, it would just be like popping out a cork out of a bottle. And I look forward to it, and that may be in part because my body's not comfortable a lot, so it would be really nice not to carry it around. But then I think, oh my gosh, I have so much beauty and love in my life. How could I be so ungrateful? And then I think maybe I'll be lying there on that bed looking around going, I don't want to leave this, I don't want to leave that. And so I feel very confused about what my own thoughts are in this regard.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm here because I have two daughters that I want them to know that I'm comfortable with taking flight. I'm comfortable with dying, and that they can be sad because I can't take that from them.
Right.
But they can release me so that I don't have to, struggle to hang on waiting for them to turn me loose,
Yeah. Very good. Yeah.
I don't know if it'll come through. Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people who, I'm the only one who's not going to die. The rest of you are, but I'm not. So, excuse me. The thing that I'm here about, besides coming to terms with the fact that, oh yeah, you really are going to die, is the whole grief thing, because grief has laid me low in the past, and I see it ahead. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, thank you. We will definitely, I think that's just such a major issue, and it's different for everybody. We'll definitely talk at some length about that, and hopefully people will want to share also, because that's one of the great barriers, grief around losing others, but there's also grief around us losing ourselves, or the idea that we lose ourselves, that when this body goes, something is just so different, and do we need to grieve about that? Whether we do or we don't, we do. we do that to ourselves. And of course, we don't have to, and we want to get to the point of, no, I'm really okay with the whole thing, because it's going to be okay. Yeah.
I am here, I think, because I've felt so comfortable with the theoretical part, and then what is what's left is reality. And, you know, and just knowing there's a lot of fear around the process. And just wondering if anyone has it on any good authority when we can get rid of this emotional stuff.
Yeah. Talk to me later. I've accomplished all of that. Yeah, no, the emotions, my goodness. Well, it's our conditioning. You know, we just, I don't know how much of it is innate and how much of it is conditioned, but I think most of it's probably conditioned. We're just conditioned to be emotional, because that's not really, the soul isn't emotional. And we just need to obviously get in greater contact, ideally full contact, and live from the soul. But boy, oh boy, that's not easy to do. Yeah.
A few days ago in meditation, when I had one of my rare and beautiful moments of feeling divine love and that everything was all right, I also had like this little epiphany-ette, I'll call it, that, you know, this life and all of the trauma, you know, it was like so lovingly and beautifully designed exactly to move me along. You know, I was thinking, all of it, really? So that was a very different sort of idea. But then I come into like, oh, but it's karma, and I kind of created it all myself. But it was still, you know, just like all of it was sort of delivered so lovingly for the good of progress. That was
great. Great. Okay. So, you know, not so many generations ago, death was more familiar than it is now. People died younger and under more intimate circumstances, in more intimate settings. Care for the dying was simpler, and for the most part, it was more reverent, and still is, especially in, you know, more what we call more primitive cultures. You know, we're modern, and we think that we're ahead of the game, but in many ways it's taken us backwards. Most people, you know, not so long ago died at home, and often in the center of a family vigil. That still happens today to some extent, but in America today, 80% of the people who die in a hospital or in some other institution. And in a hospital, you know, in a sea of all kinds of medical equipment that are perhaps helping them to stay alive. This is not bad, but there's less dignity in such a clinical setting. Curtains are drawn and doors are closed as soon as the person expires. There's a book entitled Talking About Death. The author is Virginia Morris, and she devotes a chapter to our quest of what she calls a good death. It's peaceful, it's loving, intimate, free of anxiety and turmoil, and above all, it's suited to the needs of the person who is dying. This is something, you know, I'll emphasize a little bit more and more as we go. It's about them. It's not about us. And we want to always, you know, be aware of that in terms of how we behave in the presence of other people who are going through the process. So I'd like to pose a question. Many people, understandably, are more afraid of dying than death, especially the idea of a painful goodbye. Others see the dying process as an opportunity to put things in order, to focus on resolving outstanding issues, karmic issues that may have been obstacles for us, are obstacles for us, and to make peace with God, with our own souls. So, another question. If tomorrow morning you are given 3 months to live, that's your diagnosis. What are you going to be doing in those 3 months? And I'll invite you to share if you feel to. It's a pretty major time. Kathy Bardwaj?
Well, I'm fortunate, perhaps, in that I don't have a lot of responsibilities, and so I have been using this time for a couple years to do exactly what you describe and try to work through old issues and release old hurts and forgive and just appreciate and clean out the mess between my ears so that I can go on without a lot of clutter. And it feels very good, so I would just continue what I'm doing. And I find it a very beautiful process.
Yeah, wonderful. You know, we have the story that I think those of us who have been around for a while have heard many times about Paula when she passed, and her prelude to passing was just trying to clear up absolutely as much as she possibly could that was outstanding, that, you know, she felt she wasn't happy with or she wanted to resolve so that she could move on more freely. And I think it's just so important to, and again, these are part of our teachings, of course, that, you know, we want to resolve as much as we possibly can. So then the question becomes, why do we wait to the end to do this? Why not just be doing this all the time? And, you know, but I'm busy. I've got all kinds of things I have to do. And I'm the same way. I mean, you know, it's a busy life, especially, and I don't really have any responsibilities in terms of other people. I'm helping my sister right now, but I don't have children. You know, I'm just, you know, I don't have the responsibilities within even the church that I used to have, not nearly as many. And so, you know, I want to be taking care of all these things, and yet I still manage to put them off, you know, some of them. You know, it's like, well, but I'll get to that tomorrow because today I've got to do this and this and this. And I'll tell you a story. I've told it in Sunday service before, but it's a funny but also very sad story about the great comedian W.C. Fields. Fields was an avowed atheist his entire life. He was even very assertive about it. And when he was dying, he was in a hospital room, I think for weeks, maybe even longer. He was pretty much of an invalid at the time. And so friends would come to see him, pay their respects. And on this one occasion, one of his friends came in and he found Fields reading the Bible. And he just looked astonished and he said, "Bill, what are you doing?" And Fields just turned to him and, in his inimitable style, said, "Looking for loopholes." It's very funny, but it's also very sad. We don't want to be looking for loopholes. We want to have that taken care of. That's not the way. I mean, gosh, that must have just been sort of agonizing to suddenly go, what if I was wrong all this time? Well, at least he was doing that. At least he was, conscious of the fact that he wasn't going to be here anymore, and, maybe there was something he could resolve before he went. Well, again, what causes this fear of death? It's the great unknown. We have religious interpretations, stories of near-death survivors, many of them now, even the assurances of our avatars and saints, but that doesn't make it complete in terms of our ability to be okay with it sometimes. Why? Because of attachments. We get attached to people, and some people get attached to things, and we're afraid to lose them. We don't want to lose them, and I just can't imagine the agony of being surrounded by all this stuff and feeling that that's what's important. I know that we've gotten beyond most of that because it ain't going with us. Being unable to adapt easily or willingly to change. That's really the big one. We have to be willing to change. And that's not passive. That is an active responsibility. And, sadly for some, there's also the idea that death is conclusive, that we got one shot, heaven or hell, maybe there's something in between, but I don't know. That's not what, my religion says. And I can't imagine anything more horrible than that, A common dread of death comes of the notion that no matter what we have done or where we have been, that we're not finished yet. We still have things that we think we have to do. There's more business to take care of. There are children to raise, grandchildren to mentor, friends to help. We have all kinds of details to address. Maybe we have a bucket list and we haven't checked everything off yet. I don't want to die before I get to do this or that, go here or there. And so all of these things hold us back. We're attached. And obviously our teachings tell us not to be detached, to enjoy, but not to feel that, this is who we are and that we have to remain so. So to overcome the fear of death, we have to move beyond the idea that we are in control of the clock, or that we should be. We have to move beyond the periphery of death, beyond the shallows of, just curiosity and, as I said, intellectual discussion. It's easy to just talk intellectually about death because we don't feel it. And we need to feel it, not in any sort of a morbid or fearful way, but to just bring it into our lives. In other words, we have to enter into death's domain, into that inner sanctum where it becomes real. Not theoretical, but real. And this is not necessarily an easy place to be. I think that's what keeps us from going there. But it is also not as terrible as most people tend to imagine. Maybe it's not terrible at all. Maybe it's really kind of wonderful. That's where we want to be. So, I'm going to invite you to take a few minutes here, close your eyes, and go there. Imagine yourself dying. Don't obsess, but do explore. What do you need to resolve to make a good death? Just really feel for it. Feel what that might be like. We'll just take a few minutes. And now, still staying inward, imagine yourself at the bedside of your partner or husband or wife, your parent, a brother or sister or child or best friend, facing that person's impending death. And imagine facing a life or death decision for that person. Or for anyone whose departure, might be very difficult for you. How would you deal with that? What would you do? What would you say? until we can deal with such monumental issues free of any fear, they're liable to rear up and thwart us, preventing us from rising to the occasion. And we want to be able to be fully present at their leaving and at our own. So if you feel to, you can open your eyes again. Anyone have any particular thoughts around that experience? Mari in the back there.
I always think back to the point in my life, which I was.
Hold it a little closer to your mouth.
I was much younger. I don't know. I was probably in my 30s when Peggy Dietz died. I don't know if people don't know who Peggy Dietz was. She was a direct disciple of Master and worked closely with him, was his driver for a number of years. And she came into this life with the ability to astral travel and gave Master credit for helping her to learn to stay in her body and to, be able to dive deep in that way instead. And when she was dying, she asked those of us who knew her well and had spent time with her, she said that the beings in the astral world were telling her that people here were sad that she was passing and that she needed to pass along to them the understanding that this was a celebration and that it was our job to help her make that transition by having a celebratory attitude toward what she was going through. And that was so uplifting and eye-opening to me that it's something I've carried all the years since then through all the family and friends that I've had that have passed as a way to celebrate them and ease their transition. And I just have appreciated that so much, the gift of that she gave.
Yeah, thank you. That is wonderful.
You have discovered the best way to keep me from talking too much in workshops. Good idea. I had an experience with this today. That's why I'm sharing it now. As we sat in the meditational, and I've had a death experience before, so you automatically go back to that when you're thinking about it. It pulls you to it, and so I was pulled back into it, and I noticed today, at a very much higher level than usual, the green color that surrounded everything on the way out of the body, and now I realize through my learning with my masters that the green is healing. It's the color of Archangel Raphael, and it's the healing color. And so healing is a wonderful benefit that comes from making the death transition if you allow it to be. But of course, none of this benefits can come to us if we hold on to fear and the illusion. We just prevent all of that from happening. Our choice. Mm-hmm. And so if we're comfortable enough to resolve our daily life, letting go of the fears, letting go of the illusion, then all this just comes to us now, not in the past. We don't have to make excuses of being too busy to work on resolutions when we're actually have no fear to do so. Yeah. Thank you for allowing me to go back into a very nice
thank
event.
you for sharing. That's what we we learn from each other. That's really what this is all about. Anyone else care to share? Okay. Oh, go ahead, Hanuman.
Just jumping off from what Jamin was talking about, and also the question that you gave us is imagining you're at the bedside of a loved one and have to make a life or death decision. I think it points to the fact that these are things that, especially in our age group, we should, but don't want to use a should, don't want to should on anybody, but I personally want to have a deeper connection with people that I know, so that I can celebrate their passing and be respectful of what their wishes are. And really, part of this comes up to personal responsibility. We each have a personal responsibility to take care of things so that we don't leave a bunch of garbage for our children or family or loved ones to deal with. So one of the things that I appreciate of having these kinds of conversations is just to recognize I need to do what I can so that I don't leave this place with my family feeling remorse, not about my death, but about the mess that I left behind for them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. Anyone else? Fedor?
Thanks. The first part, being present in my death, I realized the only thing that came, and it wasn't from my mind, it was from my heart, it was my daughter. And that I wanted to make sure that, like Hanuman says, not to leave her any work to do, but to clear it up and to let her know that. And but she was the only one that was like really present in my heart at that time. And conversely, when my mom passed, my daughter and I were with her, and she was looking at her dad. She was saying, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy." She was looking at him. And when the time came, I followed Hanuman's advice and told her, "Mom, go in peace. Mariel and I will be fine. We will be fine. Just go free." And soon after, in 2 or 3 minutes, she went. So yeah, that was that.
Did you, just one quick question. I mean, you said when you were, experiencing your own passing, and you wanted to be able to communicate to Mariel that it was going to be okay. Did you feel like you were able to do that?
My hope is that because she was present when we did it for my mom, that she would do it for me. And when I told her today that we're coming to the endlessness workshop, she told me, "Oh, it's about God, isn't it?" I said, "Yeah."
It's all about God. Fedor, it's all about God. Thank you, everyone. Yeah. So, obviously, what we need to do, is to reclaim death as part of life, because it's just a continuum. We need to pull it out of the closet, out of the shadows, and into the light. We need to look at it deeply over and over until it's a friend. because it is. We say that in our Astral Ascension, you know, the pilot of life. It's a friend. And so we only have fear when we hold death at a distance. We just want to bring it in. You know, the study of again, these primitive cultures is so illuminating because they got it all figured out. You know, they do. We just think we're being so smart when we kind of move beyond that and make everything more about us, you know. So, you know, whatever your fears are, if you have those fears, tease them out one by one, address them, revisit them from time to time. And you'll find that you're changing, that your whole sense around it, around death, is changing. And if you don't do that, if you continue to hold it at a distance, it sort of petrifies there in your consciousness. And whatever feels unfinished doesn't get finished. So finish now. Begin to finish now. Because when we wait, sometimes it's too late. We'll take a short break here in a minute, but I want to read to you from the first book that I wrote. This book in particular, let me remember this. There's a lot of it that I drew from my experience, our experience, Tushti and I, in the 7 months of her illness and her eventual passing. In many ways, I would have to say that has been the most important time of my life. Certainly the most instructive, difficult. Some of it was extremely difficult. We'd been married for 35 years. And I knew before she was willing to admit to herself that she was going to be leaving. And so I'm extremely grateful for those 7 months of having an opportunity to deal with that, to be willing to make the changes that I had to make, you know, mentally. But this is not specific to her, but it's very much along the lines of what we're talking about. To befriend one's death while alive is to realize the mercy of its mission. Death is not the grim reaper of lore. It is, above all, a chance to wipe clean the slate of mistaken turns. And the beauty of it is, we don't have to wait to breathe our last to gain its worth. As we give ourselves fully to each moment in time, we realize without fear or regret that, as the Buddha said, what is born will die, what is gathered will be dispersed, and what has been high will be brought low. On a subtler level, death delivers another lesson also. This is not the place, it says, to lazily drift along this life. Again, this is a quote from Sogyal Rinpoche. Whatever we have done with our lives makes us what we are when we die. And, this is italicized, absolutely everything counts. Everything counts. Inwardly, I suspect that we know that, which we often try to explain as to, why death is feared so widely. To reverse the habit of our worldly ways is a challenge more daunting in its demands and more essential in its purpose than any other that we face. And if this were not hard enough, society's enormous momentum, driven by relentless pressure and propaganda to conform to its ways, is squarely pitted against us. This is what we're up against. Repeatedly, we miss the mark, returning to try again as the elevator to heaven's gate opens to a lower floor. Like Bill Murray, the character in Groundhog Day, none of us gets out of this movie for good until we pass the exam of selfless love. So why don't we take a short break, use the restroom if you like, but please do get up and stretch. We've been sitting for a little while. And have any thoughts? I'll be here if you care to share anything. I've been standing, so I'm going to sit. No, I'm good. I'm great. Thank you. Why don't we take, 5-10 minutes, something like that.
What is the title of Virginia Morris's book?
Of whose book? Who dat? Huh? Kathy Dion. Joanne, can you take a moment and just take a look and see if Kathy Dion's out there? Oh, okay. Good enough. We can wait.
What happens when you're in the back of the line?
Mm-hmm. This doesn't have to be recorded, but Michelle, I'm going to ask you to tell your joke.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what they say about infinity. It's a long time, especially near the end.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a really good one. You know, that cartoon that I mentioned, it's actually had quite an effect on me. I mean, I just laugh out loud. But I imagine myself standing there, you know, and going, I got to answer this question. Why am I here? You know, am I here to shop? You know? No. Okay, so I'm going to put us to work here. I want you to think about, you know, what you love, what you like, what you care about, what you will be leaving behind. And I want to make a list. What are you going to be leaving behind that feels like it might be hard? You can just call it out.
Loved ones.
Loved ones. What else?
Pets.
Pets.
The community.
The community.
Nature. Yeah, Kathy said daffodils.
Said what?
Daffodils.
Daffodils.
Yeah, nature.
I'll put nature.
She said nature.
Yeah.
Sensory experience.
Yes, sensory experience, sensory pleasures, right? Some sensory experiences, no thanks.
Dessert.
Dessert? Is that what you said? Yeah, okay. Adventures. What else?
How about fulfilling service? Fulfilling service.
Fulfilling service. You might want to, if you have your notebook, you know, you might want to write some of these down, because these are going to be interesting things to think about. What else?
Yeah, this is actually something I've wondered about. When you die, do you lose certain things?
Well, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah. What else? How about just, you know, memories, pleasant memories of good times that we've had.
I'm looking forward to leaving behind the limitation.
No, we'll get there. We'll get there.
Because
No.
stuff on here we take with us. I don't think we leave it behind.
You think so? We'll see. We'll see. Okay, I mean, how about, you know, your house, where you live?
Illusion.
Say that again?
Illusion.
No. Hang on. These are things that you really care about that are going to be difficult, or at least we perceive them to be difficult to leave behind.
Responsibilities, what I'm supposed to do, my jobs and things I'm supposed to
Okay.
do that I care about.
Okay.
Unresolved regrets.
No, we'll get there. Not yet. These are things that we really want, that we.
I'll echo his, unresolved.
We're gonna get to it. I promise. This is.
I want to answer your question though.
Yeah, okay.
You're saying that these are things that we are concerned about leaving.
No, well, okay. Okay, I'll write it down.
I will echo Michael's unresolved issues. And I feel like,
Okay.
if we go, then I won't get a chance to resolve those.
Okay, that sounds good.
Well, yeah, we'll have to talk about that.
There's going to be a follow-up exercise here.
Right. Classical music. Kathy says music.
Okay, music.
Julian said friends.
Well, I think loved ones / friends. Books. Laughter, maybe. Hopefully we're going to be getting, how about a bucket list? Unfinished bucket list. Well, friends, loved ones, all that sort of thing probably comes under that heading. How about certain skills that we've acquired? Worked pretty hard to get good at certain things, and ain't going to need that anymore. Well, I mean, obviously the list can go on and on. And, all of these things, the exercises that we do like this, I mean, you may want to just add to them later on as well. It's not like we're going to get everything, taken care of here, but just to make a start, to be thinking about the things that, won't be going with us, at least not in the present sense of how we experience them now. Okay. So I'm going to erase these, except they're not erasing. Why is... Holy cow. It says dry erase on here.
What I'll get is
Oh, bummer.
I told you can't.
It's just the, looks like it's just the blue that isn't coming off.
Can you flip it over, Surendra?
I don't know if it's, no, it's not, there's another one, but I mean, she's gonna, yeah. Geez, they didn't tell the truth. Well, it says, well, maybe it says ultra clean washable. I probably should have. I guess it takes a spray. Thanks, Joanne.
Surendra, I don't think those Crayola ones can work on those. That one that you have in particular, is that?
Yeah, well, apparently not.
Yeah.
That's the only Crayola one that I have. Thanks. Oh, good. Thank you. It is washable and it smells like alcohol.
Yes, it is.
It is alcohol.
Isopropyl.
That's okay. Great. Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay. So now, the second part, which is more along the lines of what some people were calling out. What are you going to be leaving behind that you're going to be really happy to leave behind?
Suffering.
Suffering. You bet. Politics. Public speaking. Oh boy, paperwork. Taxes.
Garbage. Graffiti.
Taxes, the big one. Failures, how about that? Love to get rid of that. What else?
Losing loved ones. Losing your loved ones.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll just put grief.
Family.
You say families?
Family conflict.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so conflicts. I'll just put conflicts. Yep. That's a real good one. How about allergies?
Does worry go away?
Why not? Let's see. Worries.
Illnesses. Illnesses. Sickness.
Illness.
Yeah.
What's that? F-A. Oh, fat. Yeah, none of that's not going. How about stress? Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. What are they? I can't think of the name of it. Yeah. Did you say something, Michael?
Montavani strings.
Oh, Montavani. I had albums. But my family did anyway. Montavani. Haven't heard that in a long time. Okay. You know, all of the embarrassments. Boy, now there's. Anyway, we can add and add, but the point being, it's not going to be so bad. You know? I mean, don't have to deal with that. And so we don't want to carry any of it in our consciousness. But, you know, death as a friend becomes a lot more understandable and appreciable in situations where we realize, you know, we deal with a lot of stuff that we're just not going to have to deal with. Maybe we're going to have to come back and deal with it if we haven't, you know, resolved it, which is all the more reason that we want to, you know, be looking to get over all of these things that are, you know, that are troubling us, or that we just, you know, have to contend with. I mean, a lot of this stuff, it's just there. We have to do a lot of things that we don't necessarily enjoy doing. And we won't have to do that anymore, at least on the astral plane, hopefully. And we want to get rid of as much of it as we possibly can in the meantime as well. Okay. So, you know, again, a wonderful exercise that you might want to, you know, continue doing is making notes like that for yourself, where you go, okay, you know, I'm in kind of a funky mood right now. Let me think about, you know, something like what death is going to wipe away, clean the slate, sort of thing. And you go, man, you put that list, pretty good. I feel better already, you know?
It's going to be okay.
Yeah, it's going to be okay. Huh? Yeah. So, it's just to say is, what do we want? We want to be happy. And much of this life is not. But when we die, our struggles end. Just struggle, period. And leaving all that stuff behind is really going to be quite a relief. We're told by those that have been there, who've had those near-death experiences, and certainly by the saints and our gurus, that where we are going is going to be lovelier in every way. So what is there to regret? And this also begs the question, why do we grieve the loss of those who have gone before us? Why? Why do we do that to ourselves? Well, we say it's, it's love, it's deep, and I'm not, trying to demean that at all. It's wonderful, that love, but it can hold us back too if we aren't able to get beyond that, and we'll talk more about that. So then the question becomes, particularly with respect to other people who have gone before, is it love that we are expressing, or are we just feeling sorry for ourselves? Self-pity is perhaps a little bit a strong word, but, we kind of feel sorry for ourselves that something's been taken away that we didn't want to be taken away. Well, whatever that is, it's not theoretical, it's real, right? It's what we have to go through. And as I said, I was married for 35 years. Tushti was the love of my life. She was my best friend. And she left this world before me. And I do. I miss her. I'll say almost daily now. And, it's, even though she's been gone for almost 9 years now, which is almost hard for me to believe, but I'm still reminded of what we had, and what the reminders aren't the big ones. They're the little ones. They're sitting together having coffee across the table, or going for a walk, or making each other laugh, that sort of thing. That's what we miss, and that can be hard because it runs very deep. So we have to redirect that in some sort of positive way. And again, are we being selfish in that? We have to answer that question ourselves. But here's the question I would ask. Would I ask her, just for my sake, to give up the better life that she has now? Wherever she is, all of those things we listed that we are going to be really happy to be rid of, she's rid of them, And if I'm grieving, what's the effect? What's the effect? Who's the loser in this? It's not her. I truly believe that she's in a much better place, free of the burdens that I still have to deal with here. Over those last 7 months, she endured pretty terrible pain, and debilitating weakness. I mean, it was just the total opposite of who she was physically. I mean, she was just the healthiest, most energetic person that I ever knew, at least intimately. And so at her astral ascension, which was held here, I had this remarkable sense of the intertwining of good news and bad news. And what I said was, if a loved one is in great pain, and that great pain is taken away, but the loved one is taken away also, is that good news or bad news? And I think we have to say it's good, because love is always what we want for the other person that we love. And that had a profound effect on me, because I have to say that I have not grieved other than the missing part, missing my best friend. But there hasn't been that grief of, oh, poor me, I don't have this and that and all this other stuff to share, but I have all of you. I have a wonderful life, and I want to live that wonderful life. And I know that she's living her wonderful life, just in a different place and perhaps in a different way. And what struck me too is the realization that we never know what God has in mind for us. We just don't know. Out of the clear blue, we can just suddenly find ourselves on the other side. Boom, accidents, who knows what. I mean, in this case, this was a very prolonged illness, but we can be taken out in a heartbeat. And, what can, be seemingly just an intestinal discomfort can turn out to be a terminal illness. We don't know. So then the big question here is, do I trust that God knows what he's doing? Do I? Is this fair? It's not for me to say. It's not for me to say if it's fair. But of course it is. But it's only unfair if I don't trust that God knows what he's doing. It's not, it is about me in the sense that I have to figure out how to turn this from something that really hurts into an opportunity. But I want that to be where my mind goes, rather than, oh man, why did you do that, That's a question that we all have to answer. Do you trust that God knows what he's doing when he does really lousy things to you? Jamin was sharing a story at the break. He just had a really lousy thing happen to him, and he's got to deal with it. There's no way around it. He's got to deal with it because he's still here. And why? Why was that? You just ask yourself all the time, why? If I don't trust that God knows what he's doing, I am going to suffer. It's just that simple. This is the planet of duality, and if I go to that other side, if I choose to be a victim, feel that I'm being victimized by some loss, and it doesn't even have to be a person. Maybe it's a big financial loss, or, you get in an automobile accident and now I have to deal with this. Yeah, you do. You do have to deal with it. You can't leave the car in the middle of the street and, just simply go out and buy another one. You gotta deal with all of that stuff that we listed as what we're going to be happy to leave behind. So my job for my spiritual growth is to trust that there's a reason for this and that I'm going to direct my consciousness to making the most of whatever that is, even as I have to go through the messiness of dealing with it. Death may be terribly sad for some. Of course it is. It's very hard to lose those that we love. And as we face the end ourselves, there's a huge part of us that, of course, would rather not. But let us learn to see death as light, as the light that illuminates the good that we have done, that shines warmly on the lives of those who have lived well. And even more so, let us learn to be concerned less about extending our lives than expanding them. Expanding our lives to live more fully in the time that we are here. What does that mean to you? How will you, from this day forward, expand your consciousness and your living? What are you not doing now that would make it more fulfilling and expansive? The answer could be, and probably should be, as simple as living more in the moment. We've got to live the moment and get rid of those what ifs. What if this hadn't happened? I'd be so much happier, It happened. Sooner or later, you can put off dealing with it as long as you think you're able, but you're going to have to deal with it, or it's just going to fester, and that's just not a good thing. Any thoughts about that? About any of that? Anybody? Yeah? Hanuman?
I remember a song by Frank Sinatra about not having any regrets. Oh, I have a few, I think he says.
Yeah. Yeah.
But speaking for myself, in my meditations or in the time while I'm going to sleep or even waking up, often, or I should say occasionally, things come up that I do regret. And so I work with that by, again, offering them up to God and Guru. And when my energy feels like it's going down, I definitely go to a chant or something that is uplifting and brings me back up. I just have to come to that realization that, there's some things I've done I'm not proud of them, but I can't hold on to them either. And yet I can't just negate them. They're there.
Yeah.
So just accepting, come to a point of acceptance and move on. And, you know, like you say, living in the moment, this moment, I can do this much more better. I can love better this way. And instead of living in the past or in the future. And one of the things that you had said is, you know, what do people fear the most about dying? And what came to my mind is, what do people fear most about living?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, going back to the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Both Kathys. No. Doesn't make any difference who goes first.
I had a hard time getting through what God does to me, and this path has, taught me. Actually, it's what I've done for myself, and I might not know, past lives. I'm bringing stuff in, and so my Lord just gave me the game board. His candy land. And I march along, and my Lord awaits me always to give me what it takes to get through whatever, is in front of me. And that was very freeing for me, because I was raised a Catholic girl where God really does put a bead on you for whatever, And it was hard to shake it. It was hard to shake that until I got here. And, this whole, what goes around comes around. Karma's thrown around. That word is thrown around kind of cheaply, but what goes around does come around, and it isn't my Lord that has done that. I have done that. I have been everything, and the opportunity is to be open to His love and His help when I need to meet the task, when I need to meet the test. So it's given me freedom, really, around that particular.
Thank you.
Amen, sister.
Yeah.
Yes, I have a personal experience sometimes of ugly faces popping up in my consciousness. Oh God, you guys are here again. This is church, go away for heaven's sake. But it reminds me that we are carrying around with us the dustbin of incarnations. And I think about death, and could you get caught up in the subconscious and not be open to the light? And it reminds me of how I'm working to get more open to the light, and how every step we take is a step toward death. Every act we do is preparation for that end. And it's really, that was a beautiful concept, because it shows me what to do. Just do good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Keep doing it.
Yeah. Good stuff. Thank you.
Make a comment.
Anyone else? Thanks, Jan.
I was just going to say, as you were talking about grief, I think just my being a therapist, my training, doing grief counseling with people, a lot of the referrals that come to me are people who have lost loved ones and are in some pretty crippling types of grief that may be prolonged, complicated for different reasons. So in some respects, I honor what we've learned about the stages that people go through and where they get stuck in that process, and just recognizing that it has to be expressed. So I think there can be a tendency to say, I shouldn't feel this way, or I don't want to, have these emotions. But the reality is that how to get beyond it is to feel what you're feeling.
Yeah.
Feel the grief, feel the sadness. And I think that can help to elevate our consciousness as well. We can't stuff it down.
Right.
Which was my early training,
Yeah, of course.
Very much
Of
so.
course.
Like, it's not okay to,
Yeah.
talk about the person who's died. You should just move on. They're in a better place. Things like that. So I think now we understand a little bit more.
Yeah.
You can get stuck in the process, and it's important to feel what you're feeling.
Sure. Particularly for boys, I think, there's this tough it out. You just tough it out, which is essentially saying suppress it. And that's, you talk about a conditioning, and I know it's not just guys. It's maybe phrased a little bit differently, toward girls or toward women, but nonetheless, we become impatient with people who can't seem to get beyond it, whatever that it is. And that's, as you're saying, we'll talk more a little bit later about coping with grief, but that's a big and very real thing. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Okay, Swami Kriyananda wrote a brilliant, rather long essay called The Final Exam. It's in Religion for the New Age, an essay in that book. And I want to go through some of that because it's obviously very relevant to what we're talking about here today. But I also just encourage you to get that. I think, you can maybe even get it on the Ananda Library, but I don't know how many copies we have here, probably not more than one or two. But it's brilliant, and what he says is the most important moment in life is the last moment. And I'm going to just sort of read some of what he says. And he calls it, of course, the final exam. The thought uppermost in the mind at that time will determine where our future takes us, upward, sideways, or downward. Upward toward greater spiritual clarity and that freedom, that sense of peace. Sideways, further involvement in desires and attachments. Or downward, and I suspect nobody here is going to be inclined, at this point to be going in that downward direction toward greater darkness, toward confusion and ignorance. That's what we're all striving to get above. The Bhagavad Gita says that if our last thought is of God, it is to God that we will go. And if that thought is to families and relatives and friends and to things, it is to that we will go. And if the last thought is to regrets for the mistakes we've made, our direction will be downward. We hear over and over, and we need to hear over and over, don't do that. If you have regrets, you know, a mistake is a mistake. It's not a sin. It's not something that is forever. Why prolong it with a regret? That doesn't make any sense. But we sort of do. I mean, we think of it as humbling. Oh, I'm just not very good, or I really made a mess, and so, you know, it's kind of a way of saying, pat me on the back and say it's okay. You know, we're looking for something that we should be able to take care of ourselves. But I'm not saying it's easy. It's really, really tough, because some of the things that we've done, we do regret. But we can leave it at that level, at that point, and take the energy up rather than drag it along with us. The quote is, "Those who worship the lower gods go to their gods. Those who worship me, the Lord, come to me." And this is, I think, one of the most important statements in that great scripture. It's something to think about every time you get in a bad mood, or you know, you're feeling negative about something. You're in the throes of a material desire or an attachment. Are those the gods that you want to go to? No, of course they're not. They are the lower gods. And, you know, this is a school. We're all in school. We're trying to learn how to get past exactly things like this. And I have plenty of desires and plenty of attachments that I've still got to let go of. And, you know, one at a time. Just one at a time. Meditation. You know, we can talk about that all, because that moves us without even having to necessarily face the issue head on ourselves. I mean, in the meditation, if we can just let go, and it doesn't even have to be in meditation, obviously, just let it go, changes our lives. It lifts us. We're happier. We're lighter. We need to remind ourselves throughout life about the impermanence of everything. Nothing lasts. You know, as we said in the beginning, I mean, here we've got endlessness on this end, and everything we've known ends. We want to make these things end sooner. All of those regrets, those obstacles, those things that hold us back, those things that draw us to the lower gods the next time around.
Amen, brother.
Well, it's, you know, amen. Thanks to these guys and to all of us who support each other in getting past all of that. So the quote, "Foolish indeed is he who lays up for himself treasures here on earth." But we do, we lay them up. You know, we even put them on layaway. We put them in storage. We've got storage sheds, you know. All that, well, here's the storage shed right here. That's the one that we really need to empty out. Well, you know, we listed all those things that we are, you know, going to miss, those earthly treasures. So I won't go through that again. But, you know, just to know that when we leave here, We're not going to need a U-Haul truck. We're not even going to need a toothbrush. The next leg of the journey is going to be without any of this that we've become accustomed to carrying around. They're going to be swept away like that. You know this, we all know this, but it's hard to behave differently sometimes. It just is. I think sometimes of people like Mozart. You know, he was well known within a small community of people, you know, that sort of expanded outward. I mean, does he have any idea how he is appreciated now? And if he does he care? Is that important to him anymore? You know, Vincent van Gogh never earned more than like $15 for the paintings that he created. What would he think, or what does he think, of the idea that people are paying tens of millions of dollars for those paintings now? I mean, would that, you know, hey, you guys, why didn't you help me out back then? You know? That's not what it was all about for him. So, you know, what do we don't know if all of these things that are so important to us need to be important when we're gone, other than whatever sort of effect they had on our soul, you know, positive or negative. This again, I'm still, you know, talking from Swamiji on the final exam. He gives us some very good practical ways to deal with some of these things, and we've heard most of them before. The idea of each night building a bonfire in your mind and tossing into the, you know, everything, the bad, the good, you know, the habits. You know, obviously we know that we don't wake up the next day and it's all gone, but we do this a step at a time. And it's important to do that, to realize that, again, the impermanence, this is temporary. All of this, us, is what we perceive to be us, is temporary. He says, like when you're showering and you're washing your arm, just imagine, this is one of these days, this is just going to be dust. It's not going to be an arm, and, you know, who knows where all those atoms are going to go afterwards. They're going to go somewhere, and somewhere hopefully useful, but they're not going to be a part of me anymore. And so that whole consciousness around what he's trying to teach us is to just let go, get used to letting go now, all the time. You know, the moment that just ended is in the past. Let it go. Unless there's some way it can be instructive for us going forward, it's gone. You know, let it go. He says that attachment is not only binding, it is blinding. It stirs the heart's feelings with emotions of fear, hesitation, confusion. In anything we do, excessive concern for the outcome of whatever that action is saps our energy. We want that energy to be uplifting. And when it is, everything that we do is done more effectively because we're not holding on. We're just in the moment, living in that moment where everything is fresh and we can respond in a fresh way towards it. What is non-attachment? He emphasizes that it's not being indifferent. It's not, oh, I don't care. Of course we care. We should care. We should care enough to do things as right and as best we can, but without attachment to the fruit of it, because nothing is ours. Absolutely nothing. It's all on loan. There are wonderful gifts that we're given sometimes. Sometimes those gifts are pretty heavy duty, and we don't necessarily recognize them as gifts until later on. But it's all a gift. And so what we're talking about here, what he's talking about, of course, is in Sanskrit, nishkam karma, defined in the Bhagavad Gita as giving to God the fruit of everything that we do, and even everything that we aspire to. But don't relinquish interest in it. That's also, and a very important part. Be interested. Be interested in that moment and bring energy to it. Offer only the outcome. And sometimes, we all know we do the right thing, we work really hard, and it still all falls apart. Well, why? For a reason. And what we want to do is step back and say, okay, what do I need to learn from this? It wasn't an accident. Whatever is delivered to your mailbox, that's for you. It's for you. Got your name on it. Open it up, see what's inside. What can I do with this? And again, just to know that every fulfillment is sooner or later canceled by a disappointment, if it's of a more material or sensory experience. That, this is the planet of up and down, night and day, good and bad, and they trade places all the time in degrees. Not everything is always real bad. Sometimes just a little bit bad, and some things are a little bit good, and some things are really good. But, you got to give it up. You got to give it to God, because otherwise it swings to the other end of the pendulum. He says that you alone in your soul essence are what remains eternally. All else is only a dream. Life follows life, each one seeming so real until death comes along to change the whole story again. Death wakes us from that dream. It doesn't wake us necessarily from delusion, because we haven't probably resolved everything. That's why we have to come back until there is no sense of that delusion anymore. But obviously, why not make the effort now? Make the serious effort now to awaken those energies that are going to move past the delusion. Because as Jamin has said a number of times, it's all delusion out there. If you recognize it as that, and you see it for what it is and for how instructive it can be, you're ahead of the game. You're making that spiritual progress. We've, heard about, talked about a little bit, the idea of the life review. What's it going to be like? We may not know, and we don't want to dwell on all of that stuff other than to use the idea of it to move us to where we want to be, to where that life review is going to be something that we go, hey, great. From the previous life to this one, I made some real progress here. I don't have it all figured out yet, but I'm getting there. I've moved one train car up, from the last time. And also to know that you will be forgiven. There's always forgiveness. The story, that Master tells of this disciple that, he did something. He just really sort of screwed up in some way. And I don't know whether the guru scolded him, but at least drew to his attention that what he had done was not good. And the disciple said, but you will forgive me, won't you? And Master sort of said, what else can I do? Well, again, more of the good news. So dwell on the thought of freedom from delusion, of freedom from desires. Maybe you're not there yet, but, above all, if you are able to do so, to rid yourself of the thought of any personal, separate, or individual identity. This is me, it's about me, that you are a ray of God's light. See your little sense of reality becoming absorbed into infinite bliss. And then, I'm just going to recommend that you read it because I'm not going to go through all this, but he answers a lot of questions that obviously people have asked him, like, what do you do if a person's in a coma? And if they're in a coma, are they dead already? I mean, how do we handle that? I'm toward the very end of our time together. I'm going to read a somewhat lengthy piece, a wonderful piece about a woman who had a near-death experience, who was in a coma for a long time, actually, and very miraculously came out of it. And he also, gives advice on, what we do as a person is passing, chanting, have perhaps the Om tape in the background, chanting or whispering Om into their ears, a lot of other interesting things that are important to know, particularly if we're at the bedside or with someone who is going through that dying process. He has a lot of wonderful things to say about that. But this is important, and it gets into the grieving part of it that we'll talk about now. The question is, what effect does grieving for a departed person have on that person's soul? Grief, he said, is born of attachment, and it can hold the soul back and keep it tied somewhat to this earthly plane of existence. Do we want to do that? Of course we don't. So, obviously try instead to help others move on. That's what we do in our Astral Ascension. I mean, that's why we do it. We're helping them to move past this plane, that not holding them in any way. We want to send them blessings and love and invite them to just soar in freedom from our sense of attachment to them. That doesn't say you go, then I just won't grieve. Of course you will. Of course you will. But do it not for you. It's not about you. Let's help that person, move on. And another thing he talks about is, should we donate our bodily organs to science? He actually wasn't in favor of it because he felt that there's still vibration there. There's your vibration there in those organs. And I mean, he wasn't saying don't ever do that. You're still doing a good thing. But know that there's something that could be pulling you back, some tendency, that's still alive in somebody else. And he also, is asked, is it better to, be cremated or to be buried? And he favors, recommends cremation because you're incinerating all of this. You're letting the soul be on its way. Unless you are a saint, and I'm not there, so I've already arranged for my cremation. And this is another good thing to do if you have the resources to do it, to think about that, just so that, again, it's just a bit more liberating. This is a really interesting story that I never knew. It's just remarkable. I recently finished watching Ken Burns' documentary on the Civil War. And, Robert E. Lee was arguably the greatest general in American history. He was just amazing. He was intuitive. I mean, if you've studied the Civil War, the Confederacy was winning all the battles in the beginning. I mean, the Union just couldn't get anything right. They couldn't get a general that could compete with him at all. And he was just, up until Gettysburg, he made his huge mistake at Gettysburg. But up until that point, with by far fewer resources and fewer men fighting, he was, just humbling the Union Army. Well, I say that because there's just this amazing story about Robert E. Lee's mother. Robert E. Lee's mother apparently died. This was before he was born. Apparently died and was prepared for burial and was actually put in a coffin. And all of a sudden there's just knocking on the inside. She had awakened from whatever that coma was, went on to give birth later to Robert E. Lee. Amazing. Greatest general in American history, who was almost, maybe the Union would have won in less than 4 years. Maybe that would have been a good thing. But, it's just, it's interesting that, again, there's just so much we don't know. And yet, we have to make decisions. Was it a wrong decision to prepare, his mother for burial? Probably not. Looked like she was dead to me, And I'm not saying that, you know, if you are in a position of having to make that final decision for somebody, that you just should hesitate and get all tied up in knots. I mean, sometimes it's clear you do the best you can, but we just never know. We just never know. I'll leave the final exam at that point and hope that you have an opportunity to read it, because it's just very instructive on so many things. And I want to move on before we take our lunch break here. But, well, actually, why don't we get up and just stretch at least? You know, I've been sitting here again for a little while. And, you know, if anybody, when we sit back down, if anybody has any comments or questions at this point, please, you know, raise your hand, and we'll always invite that. Okay. We'll probably break again in another half hour, 40 minutes or so. You know, break for an hour for lunch. So Jamin and, okay, 2 people. Does anybody have anything, you know, while we're waiting for the others to return? Okay. Everybody doing okay?
I always wonder about that thing of the last instant of your life is what determines everything. Because every instant of my mind is not in the best.
Well, of course. No, I mean, believe me, that when you talk about the uneasiness around it, it's like, you know, I'm not there yet. I don't know. I don't want to be having any thought of regret or I wish this hadn't happened or, I don't want to die, all that kind of thing. And it's a tough one to get around. But, we practice. That's what we're talking about here. We just want to practice being in that space as much as we can be, ideally all the time, but we're not there yet. We're not with these guys, and it's tricky stuff. And if you've led this tremendously exemplary life, and there's something at the last moment that interferes, I don't think you're going, God, again, it's trusting. God knows, who you are, what you've done, where you need to be, but let's give ourselves a fighting chance here. Yes, Nancy.
I'm remembering something Pooja once told me she does. She said her constant prayer is, God, help me remember you at the moment of my death. And that's kind of the mantra that she repeats to herself.
Yeah.
God, help me. Okay, this is something I heard from Pooja, that her constant prayer is, God, help me remember you at the moment of my death. And it's just short and sweet and right to the point.
Yeah. Yeah, I think of Gandhi, he's shot, and as he's dying there, he just Ram, 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 Yeah. Yes.
One of the things that really helps me is a practice of gratitude for everything, because some of the hardest things that have ever happened have given me the biggest windows of grace, and so sort of like maybe after the bonfire, I'm just moved into gratitude for the day, for everything,
Yeah.
And yeah.
And that
Blues, I'm telling you.
that's not hard to get to. Just a simple practice, even if you don't particularly mean it at the time, is you just say thank you. Oh man, that was nasty. Thank you. Thank you, because it turns your whole focus. Yeah. Maybe you're still going to grumble about it for a while, but at least you've moved in that direction of, I've got to deal with this.
Keeps you from separating.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so just very briefly, I'm not going to go into a lot on karma and reincarnation. I said in the beginning and quoted from Lord Krishna, you see bodies falling, I see souls rising. And what Master said and Swami repeated, and we've heard over and over again, what comes of itself, let it come. We have to have that consciousness that whatever this is, including our own dying and death, whatever comes of itself, let it come. And as Kathy just said, be grateful. Be grateful for the life that you have had, the opportunities for the growth that you've made, and the love that has been given to you and that you've shared in return. It's beautiful. It really is beautiful. But we need to have that attitude. And we have metaphors all around us. And I think the one that stands out for me, I mean, the easiest one, it's obvious, is the seasons. Everything has a season. We have seasons. You know, we're born, we live, we die, you know, and, you know, in between there's all kinds of things that go on. And you just, the easy and beautiful one, I think, is just, you know, in nature, the deciduous trees. Do you think that the trees regret the loss of their leaves in the autumn? I don't know, but I really don't think so.
I think they are really happy for getting the sap down into the roots.
Yeah, maybe so. And hey, this is just now I've got a good rest coming, you know, and I can deal with the wind and the rain and the snow and all that, and I'm going to be reborn with all new leaves the next time around in the spring. It's a beautiful metaphor. And so, you know, are we unhappy about the fact that we're older now? And we're hopefully going to get older before we're out of here. But again, we don't know. You know, to just let those leaves go. Let them go. Hey, thanks for being here. You're on your way. You're going to become something else. You know, the dust, and you're going to give birth to new life. That's all these cycles. They're just cycles, and I love that. But what we're up against is a society that's saying, no, you got to hang on to those leaves. You got to get more of them. You know, go out. You got to get more leaves because that's what's going to make you happy. Grow branches, get big, and you know, and the bigger you are, the more prosperous, the happier you're going to be. Thankfully, we know that just ain't true. Which isn't to say it isn't great to have nice things and, you know, wonderful relationships and all that, but letting go is the imperative here. The more we do let go, the less there is to fear. It's that simple. Instead of dreading death as a loss, we surrender our old mistaken ways and our victories as well, because we enable them to happen, but we enable them to happen with God's power. It's all God flowing through us, and we want to utilize that energy. Will we ever have everything figured out? No, not a chance. The human mind is just too limited. It's that, that cup as opposed to the ocean. We can't take it all in. One of the things that I'm going to read one other piece in here about, the fact that there are just things we may not understand, but that we have to accept as happening for a reason, because we want to trust that God knows what he's doing. I don't know if all of you remember, I remember very clearly an event on Christmas Eve, 2004. I'll get to that in this reading. Tragic events occur at times from far out of the blue, destined to turn our lives upside down or extinguish them altogether. Natural disasters and the ones we create ourselves, they're all just features of the landscape into which we have been born. And who can know exactly why? We tend to think of karma as a personal matter, but it can be collective as well. Nations and tribes accumulate karma, as do smaller and even seemingly random groups of people. And members of these collectives are seldom conscious of the karmic connections that they share. Perhaps the ties are of other lifetimes. And in view of this, we wonder, was there a karmic relationship, for example, that encompassed all 230,000 people who were swept away on Christmas Eve by a massive Indian Ocean tsunami in 2004? For the answer to such questions as this, we have to look to our teachings, to the ancient wisdom of avatars and sages, and to the light that shines in the east of a deep meditation. But sometimes, nonetheless, we are left with mysteries that we cannot fully solve. Just as a cup cannot hold the contents of a much larger vessel, we cannot know if or how our past life connections may be at play in this one. The volume in the vessel that contains them is greater than that of our capacity to receive it. Still, the message delivered in sudden misfortune is ever the same. Be ready to accept with equanimity all possibilities. Bad things happen to good and bad people alike. So what is the good of denial, anger, or regret? What is the point of wishfully dwelling on a different outcome that did not occur instead? Help where you can. Pray to heal where it hurts. Feel, but do not lose yourself in emotion. Calmness in time of sorrow or crisis is not easily won. We've been conditioned to worry and fear, to react and blame, to believe that suffering is cleansing. Truly, we have much to unlearn, and it is this reverse learning process that is the essential learning curve before us. Anyone? I can move on if there isn't, but it's just, all we're saying is there's just so much we don't know. Jamin.
I was just going to say, the first time I've heard this out of this self-realization tradition, because I haven't read a lot of some, but not as much. But it's the same thing Yeshua was saying now. This is the time of moving into unlearning. Mm-hmm. And this is our goal here in 2025, is to really get into unlearning. It's too valuable to even try to define. It's so necessary for now.
Thank you. Okay. I'll just very briefly go into one more section, and then we'll take a break. So, how should we define a good dying and a good death? What are the basic components? The act of dying, especially when we are in the throes of it, is powerfully paradoxical. It makes almost everything else seem remarkably trivial, and at the same time, more important than ever. It's interesting that way. It's just such an intense time. The final days of life, even amid the onset of grief and exhaustion, can and should be deeply infinite, intimate and loving. This is a time for self-centeredness to disappear, along with the usual frustrations and irritations of our daily lives. It's a time of vulnerability and of pain, forgiving and forgiving. It's interesting, Joan Didion's book, The Year of Magical Thinking, after her husband died, she was pretty devastated. And she described it in a most interesting way in that book, The Year of Magical Thinking. She said, in time of loss, and it can be any big loss, time itself seems askew, as if the head and the heart exist in different time zones. I thought that was... Have you ever had an experience like that, where your head and your heart are just like, whoa, they're just somewhere not together yet? And there's another gentleman, Frank Ostaseski, who has written and lectured a lot on the subject of death and dying. And he has 5 points that he wants to make. Number 1, don't wait to tell people that you love them. Don't wait. Number 2, welcome everything. Push nothing away. 3, bring your whole self to the party. Fear and helplessness together. Be willing to be vulnerable. 4, find a place of rest within the middle of all of that. We talk about that, of course, meditation. That's what we emphasize, calmness, calming that restless heart, that restless mind. And 5, cultivate a don't know mind. In other words, hey, this is all new to me. That beginner's mind, this is new. Okay, here it is. I'm dying. Bring your whole self to the party. So why don't we break for lunch? If you didn't bring lunch, obviously you're going to want to go out and get something. So it's 5 minutes to 12. Why don't we get back here, say, at 1 o'clock? Does that work? Thank you, guys. You've been terrific.